Good morning. I am Steve Weber. Welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show here on Friday, March 5th, show number 138. And today we are welcoming back Jay Toups to the show. Jay was with us last week on Friday, and we kind of laid out the how he came up with this idea of converting carbon waste, trash, essentially, into alcohol fuels. And today we're going to get into a little bit of the technology, just kind of enough to give you a flavor of it. And then we'll also tell you about some of the challenges in terms of the social and the political will that needs to occur for it to become a reality. So that will be coming up at about 15 past the hour. Alrighty, and my monologue today is going to be lightning in a bottle. And I'll share my own lightning in a bottle story, so that's going to happen just after the announcement. So let me tell you what's going to happen next week. Plan is I will do 5 shows next week live, and I've got guests scheduled for 3 of those 5 days, and but 2 of them I can announce for sure because one of the guests we're not sure what day she is going to appear. But on Tuesday, Angie LaRue comes back to the American Gumption Morning Show. She'll be making a 3rd time visit, and we'll be talking about crystals, advanced healing, and quantum. So we'll be going out into the particle world. Alrighty. And then on Thursday, Christy Holt comes and joins us. And Christy's company is called Vibionics. And it's basically vibes. And it's a way of measuring the vibration of your voice and giving you some feedback. And our technology today allows you to actually measure that and then make you aware of where your vibrational pattern is and see if it's in alignment with what you want. And the science behind this is quite fascinating. So that'll be coming up on Thursday. Christy Holt and Angie LaRue. And then I have another guest that I'm not going to mention who it is, but on either Monday or Wednesday, she's going to fill in. So we're going to have a full week next week. So, alrighty. So let's go ahead and get right into the monologue, and then we'll get to Jay Toups here in just a few minutes. The monologue, like I said, is lightning in a bottle. And I took a little bit of inspiration because what Jay's trying to do is something pretty darn big, and so I think that this monologue will maybe tie in with that. But I looked up, we all become familiar with the term lightning in a bottle, and I did a little bit of research, and really the reference was back to Benjamin Franklin and his famous kite experiment. And the idea was like he had this kite flying up there, lightning's going to hit the kite, it's going to come down the string, right? He's holding the key, he gets a little shock, right? Lucky he didn't kill himself. And I don't even know if it's true whether he did this or not, but that's the story we all heard about. But anyway, the idea is like you're going to take the lightning and you're going to put it in a bottle. All right, so that was the original. It was a Leyden, something called a Leyden jar, Leyden, a Leyden jar. I'm not even sure what a Leyden jar is. I probably could have done better research on this. But anyway, you're going to put this lightning in the Leyden jar. So lightning in a bottle. And I don't know. I guess you sell that. You put, you package lightning in a bottle and then you sell it. Maybe that was his idea. And but the variant of it was also called bottled lightning. All right. So then now this is kind of fun. I had no idea this. Back in roughly 1941 in baseball era, Leo Durocher. I remember Leo Durocher, a manager. He was an old man when, I was just a kid, and he's still around, and he was a famous manager and very feisty kind of a guy. I think he played second base when he was a player. But anyway, he started using the lightning in a bottle to indicate a difficult feat. So like, you can imagine like, some kind of a special catch or a fantastic double play or even a triple play, or a no-hitter, kind of a lightning in a bottle type of a feat. So it was like a difficult feat. And that's when it became, more like mainstream again, and took on kind of the connotation that it, ultimately evolved into today. And then in the 1980s and 1990s, it took on a wider use, and it meant a great fleeting success, lightning in a bottle, and, kind of a flash in the pan, maybe, something that just sort of comes and goes. So Since 2000, roughly, it's become very popular, and it means something a little more positive than the fleeting success that it kind of initially meant. And it's like a difficult or challenging feat, particularly to attempt such a feat. So if you're attempting to do something very difficult, you're looking to capture lightning in a bottle, or a great unlikely fleeting success, particularly entrepreneurial or media. The media loves to make people up in the big fancy, big star sensations, and then boom, loves to knock them down. And gosh, the last couple of years have just been example after example of that. The great white hope, the great person coming in to, save everything. And then, so they love to make this person into a hero, and then they love to make him or her into a scapegoat and, knock them down. So anyway, that's a little bit about the idea of the lightning in bottle. And I really use that phrase, and I named the monologue that because I really want to kind of shift it into the overnight success story, because they're kind of related. I was thinking it more of an overnight success story, but the lightning in a bottle had a little bit different connotation and meaning, a little more like fleeting, a little more like impossible, and a little more, I don't know, but the overnight success story, we kind of know what that means. Well, the overnight success story is really a myth. There are really no overnight success stories, because behind every overnight success story, there's this like tremendous amount of hard work that went into, creating, whatever that overnight success is. And so what it really is more of a market suddenly realizing and recognizing whatever somebody was talking about as oh, here it is. And again, that media loves to jump on these kind of stories. And, you need some of that to get it out there into the mass public, mass awareness. So, we want to, somehow, do we want to? It depends on what you're looking to do, whether we want to or not. But in order for it to become an overnight success, that has to be like a widespread story. It has to be one of these like stories that just captures people's imagination and everybody talks about it. And then it goes from being essentially unknown to being something widely known. So the market suddenly realizes and accepts it, whether it's just a story or whether it's an actual, product, that sort of thing. But again, in the second part of that is that there's always been years and years of toil and hard work behind it to make it all happen. So it's not like it's an overnight success story. It's an overnight awareness story, but it's not an overnight success story. And so, this hard work, it's not like just like somebody showed up and came up with an idea, and the next day it's a great idea. So now, I had my own experience with that, and the movie Forrest Gump was kind of an overnight success. Although again, it was the actor involved had done years and years of work, and the director involved had done movies before, and Paramount Pictures had put out lots of movies. So they were in the business of doing that. They just keep pumping out movies, and some of them hit for whatever reason, and some of them don't. So the movie was a very successful thing. And then the Bubba Gump restaurant came about less than 2 years later, and that started up. And my own story in relating to this is that, and this really is as close to an overnight success story as you could possibly imagine, is less than 3 weeks before my first day working professionally as Forrest Gump, I didn't even know anything about it, right? So I heard a news story that said that they're opening up the restaurant, and I instantly went, oh my gosh. And I called them up, and I went down there and, showed up in costume and, got hired. And a week later, after that, showing up and doing that, the Bubba Gump opened, and, the rest is history. It was a 15-year journey and story. And it was kind of an overnight success thing for me, because it just really did happen. It wasn't planned. It wasn't something I was looking for. I had done the costume a year and a half earlier for Halloween. So I had it all set to go. So in some ways, like, the seeds were all planted for it. And then when they announced that it was opening up, I took the initiative to call them up and go down there and do it. And, it just was like perfect timing. And the next day, because the movie's success, because the concept and people liking it, it just kind of exploded and took off. And then, I enjoyed, a 15-year run from it. And so I was thinking about the idea of fleeting success. And it's kind of hard to say that 15 years is like fleeting. And yet, like when I look back at it now, it is a bit fleeting, because it was there and then kind of all of a sudden it wasn't there. So it was 15-year nice run. And it was more than just like, your 5 minutes of, 5 minutes of fame, or what's the expression? I'm forgetting it now. 15 minutes of fame. 15 minutes of fame. I had 15 years of fame. And so it was a lot of fun. And, like I said, so what are some of the other business successes? Edison and the light bulb, like what, 1,000 tries before he got one to work, the right filament. Steve Jobs and Apple Computer, kind of a modern day, Steve Jobs is kind of a modern day Edison, in the sense that he created the personal computer, and IBM created one, and Microsoft created a version, but he kind of made it like really friendly and user friendly. And yet he gets fired from the same company that he started. And then he starts a second competing company, and then he comes back and merges with it and takes back over the company. And it's a great story from a entrepreneurial and from a determination, and a guy motivated that way. Facebook, Zuckerberg, kind of that story hasn't been completely written. Will be interesting to watch and see what happens the next few years. But obviously he's been riding a big wave. And Bezos at Amazon, he just sort of stepped down finally as the CEO, and just in the last month or so. And yet, he's like, the first or second richest guy in the world as a result of this idea. And, we could think of Google, but all of the founders that were involved with that are kind of retired, and, it's a whole different thing now. And so there's no one person like, Bezos at Amazon and Zuckerberg, who are kind of synonymous with the name of the company. Google was a little wide. There was three of them, Larry, or, I forget them all names, but they're all. So, and then actors, last thing I'll just say about success, instant overnight success, or catching the lightning in a bottle, is actors and actresses. And they constantly tell the story, or they almost all have the story of, like, struggling and waiting tables and little bit parts. And then all of a sudden they get that role that kind of pushes them over, and then they're that instant success. And yet it kind of goes back to that myth thing I said, number one, like the market suddenly recognizes or realizes. And so the overnight success was really like in the world catching on and becoming aware, and a media story, and, making it all change. So anyway, that's the lightning in the bottle monologue, and, inspired by the big thing that our guest is trying to do in his life, and then the big thing that we're all trying to do in all of our lives. And, I was lucky in the sense that I caught lightning in the bottle in the role of Forrest Gump, playing that with Bubba Gump for 15 years. And then, I thought I was going to do the same thing with the next chapter, my speaking business. And, that just sort of, steadily chugged along for 10 years. And now, of course, I'm on to the American Gumption thing, and the same thing. We're laying the groundwork for that instant overnight success, when suddenly it somehow catches on, and you do one type of a video, and it suddenly goes viral, and launches you into the next the next range with it. So alrighty, so that's it for lightning in a bottle. Let's go ahead and see if our guest Jay Toups is ready to go. I see him I see him backstage. Let's welcome him back to the American Gumption Morning Show. Good morning, Jay Toups. Welcome back.
Good morning, Steve.
Good. So how you doing this morning? How's life in Montana?
Life is beautiful. We will be in the mid-50s today, which is wonderful for early March. It should be a bluebird day outside. The snow is melting, and here we are.
Life is good. Life is
Uh,
good. Well, so
let-
here's what I want to do, Jay. Is I'm gonna read your. We introduced you last week and read the bio. I'll reread the bio, but I cannot play the first time guest theme song because that we did that last week, so we got rules to follow. But let me just tell people who missed last week's show who you are, and then we'll get into the conversation. So Jay Toups is the founder and CEO of Bioroot Energy. Bioroot Energy is one of today's best positioned clean fuel startups. Its purpose is to develop gas to liquid GTL, gas to liquid fuel products designed to convert solid and liquid waste, biomass, methane, and CO2 into clean, powerful, higher mixed alcohol fuels and specialty chemical alcohols. The mission of Bioroot Energy is to balance local and regional business interests, diverse engineered technologies and feedstocks, finance, environmental, and produce this clean and profitable liquid fuel generation. So prior to founding Bioroot, Jay worked for over 40 years as an entrepreneur, executive, consultant in real estate, oil field, info technology, retail, publishing, marketing. He did everything. You were a man of all of the world. So, and he's also an award-winning guitarist and lifelong supporter of the performing arts. So, Jay Toups, welcome back to the American Gumption Morning Show.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Go ahead.
I very much appreciate the opportunity to do an extended interview, a couple of them with you. And just let me say that your interview style reminds me of Charles Kuralt, who I met as a child on the beach in Gulfport, Mississippi, when he was traveling and across the country doing his interviews. So this really is a wonderful revisit of that whole mantra of discovering the story in the heartland by going out and seeking it out. And it very much reminds me, your style reminds me of Charles Kuralt.
Well, thank you. That's one of the, Charles Kuralt Across America. And he had an RV and he just drove around and he found the common man and the common story. And the tagline here is ordinary Americans or ordinary individuals living extraordinary lives. And, whatever extraordinary is in the special thing that they are bringing to the world and trying to make it a better place. So yeah, great. Thank you for that. That's very kind of you to say. I would, that's my goal. I want to travel around in the RV. Right now we're in, lockdown mode. So we started it virtual and thank goodness we could do that. So yeah, it's been a great year. So yeah, last week we discussed, on show number 124, which was just 1 week ago, we discussed and I'm just going to kind of reframe it and then we're going to move on. But the genesis of the idea and the way it came about was you were living in the woods. So you had just moved to Montana where you're at still today. And there was a big, massive fire. And that fire got you thinking about, geez, are we managing our forest properly? It was like a couple-year project. You discovered all of that and you got involved with forest management research, and Big Sky Coalition looked at the whole thing and it was like, my goodness, we just like put fires out and we don't let fires burn like they used to. And consequently, when they finally do burn, it's like a massive, massive thing. So anyway, that was like kind of a pivotal moment for you because then you went, well, maybe we could take this fuel and maybe we could do something with it. And so you did some research and you came across the idea of gasification, or GTL as it's called, and the Fischer-Tropsch process, where we basically take that fuel and you convert it to this alcohol fuel and other specialty chemicals. But you do it in a way that is cleaner and more environmentally friendly than, a lot of the processes and a lot of the things that are happening today. And that is really the, like that maybe 10-year journey for you. Like you weren't looking to do this. It just sort of like fire literally came to your door and it kind of woke you up. So we went through that whole thing in kind of a lot of detail. What else would you, before we get into the details of it, I mean, is there any major pieces that I'm forgetting in terms of how lightning, struck you, and you thought, I got to go do something about this?
Well, let me just say that in the 1970s, I worked in the Gulf of Mexico oil industry offshore on my father's oil field service boat. He was a ship's captain, and I worked as a deckhand rigger, and got an early look at what the oil industry is all about when nobody's looking. And when you're 100 miles offshore, there's nobody around to really monitor what you're doing. And so there was a good view of what's broken in this industry as a child, relatively child. I was 19 when I started. Stuck with me, and I never in a million years thought that I would become a competitor to the oil industry or would want to go up against this giant industry with a better mousetrap, as it were, which alcohol fuels by every measure really are. So
Yeah, so it's funny how there's that kind of tying back to the overnight success story where these seeds get planted in an earlier part of our life, and it just sort of percolates, and it's all kind of training and preparation and that vibration of energy that's happening. So you fast forward, you have this place where you buy a brand new house, or you buy a house, at least, whether it was brand new or not. Brand new for you, it almost burns down, and you're like, oh my gosh, living in the woods is a little bit crazy, and oh my gosh, we're not taking care of our. So anyway, you go through this whole process, you discover, okay, we could take this biomass of wood products that need to be thinned out of our forest anyway, but then you convert the idea to, gee, we have a bigger problem. There's like one bigger fish that needs frying, and that is the waste and the garbage and the trash that we're using right now and putting into land fields and landfills, and you're going, why don't we, in a sense, these wood products and this garbage on a chemical level, composition level, are essentially the same thing. We could just take the trash that we're accumulating and just getting rid of, either burning it or putting it in landfills and wasting all of that energy. We could be making fuel out of it.
exactly correct. This is we live in a carbonaceous world. We're 68-70% carbon. Almost everything we consume is carbon based. If it's a hamburger, if it's a steak, if it's a salad, we live in homes which are primarily constructed of carbon based materials. When we drink a beer, we're drinking carbon. Uh, of course, carbon with water and oxygen and so on and so forth. But carbon is the fundament of how life is built, and how and carbons keep going. If something today is a food like a hamburger, tomorrow it might be a stool in a toilet, but the carbon keeps going. It never dies. Carbon is like water in the sense that it keeps being converted in a cycle of use and reuse in many respects. And we can get to that as we go into our conversation. I actually made some notes today talking points. So.
Well, good. So let me go ahead and do a screen share, and I'm going to just we're not going to show too many slides, but I do want to share this first. This is really this Bioroot Energy collage of 4 pictures tells the story, and that we need a lot of fuel because we have a lot of different items out there that are demanding the fuel, and we have a whole lot of trash, and we have a whole lot of wasted energy, like from forest fires. And that's really what the thing is the idea of like, okay, we got trash, we can get rid of it and we can make it into fuel. And right now we're using fuel that powers these things. And what you're saying is that there's a fuel that's kind of an equivalent that we don't need to like change all of our automobiles and all of our
Correct.
operations. We could put a different type of fuel in there, and here's where we're going to get the fuel from this all this carbon waste that we're having a hard time getting rid of today. And I don't know, is that it? Is that the story in a nutshell?
Very much so. We're coming to the end of the carbon consumption generation or paradigm of burning things to make things go somewhere. We're coming to the end, but it's still a dirty business. When the first oil well was drilled in 1856 by Edwin Drake outside of Titusville, Pennsylvania, that was the big bang of the oil business that John D. Rockefeller picked up on when he started Standard Oil in 1870. And the rest is very much history in terms of that choice was made by a market maker. John D. was a wonderful marketer, very financially adept. He was very good at political, let's call it lobbying to make it a nice word, and of industrial ball busting, as it were, to get his way and to have oil become the choice of how do we illuminate a lamp? How do we replace animal fat, for example, as an illuminant for lamps? That was one of the early markets for Standard Oil. But the real blossoming of the oil business began with the first automobiles by Otto Diesel and Henry Ford. Henry Ford was the original alcohol fuels advocate. Henry, and of course, during that time, the first electric vehicles were also made. So at that point, we already had what we are having today, which is the evolving choice between electric vehicles and oil powered vehicles. And it's still pretty much a binary choice. But back then in the early 1900s, alcohol was a true competitor on all fronts in terms of use, emissions, performance, and it was the cabal of the oil industry, which was well organized, against the corn farmers who were not well organized, but they knew how to make alcohols, but they weren't a business because their business was growing food. John D. was very organized, and that worked for the government, which wanted to grow the national economy as quickly as possible to fight wars. Of course, we're well known for fighting wars. I think we've been fighting wars for 92% of the years we've been a country. So to fuel conflict and keep the peace, as it were, oil was the ideal fuel to power a rampantly growing or rapidly growing national economy and propel people from one side of the country via rail, via the first cars, later planes, semi trucks, and so on and so forth. The alcohols, what we know about alcohols literally is in a can of beer. Mm-hmm. It's 8% or 5% water, the 5% alcohol, and the remainder is water. We can drink alcohol because it is biodegradable. It's water soluble. We can blend it with water. We can spill it on the ground. We can do all kinds of things with alcohol. We can sterilize our skin. We can sterilize surfaces. And what I want to do, just real briefly, is burn a very small amount of higher mixed alcohol fuel. And I would never do this with gasoline in my home. If I would burn this and it were gasoline, I would have pollution. I would have black floating stuff in the air. What you will notice, I'm lighting a match. You may not be able to see the fuel burning because that's how clean it's burnt. It's actually burning, and pretty soon I'll have to put the glass down because the glass will get so hot. And it is already getting hot. And I'll set a piece of paper on fire so you can see. Oh, there it went. So you can see that it is indeed burning. Now, if this were an oil fire, I wouldn't do what I'm about to do, which is put it out with water. Because if you put water on an oil fire, all it does is spread it around. This is an alcohol fire. When it catches fire, you can put it out with a little bit of water. And I have no flame. It's
amazing.
Totally out. Now I could go to my nearest house plant, dump this on the house plant, and feed that plant once, because alcohols are one of the nutrients of decomposition. Bugs and plants can eat simple alcohols. So that's kind of the chemistry lesson of what the choice became in the 1900s between a float on water kills birds, causes wars, causes pollution, causes garbage oil. And what we did with alcohol was essentially villainize it by taxing it as a vice. That's why we had prohibition for 10 years, and why people still built stills and made their own whiskey and wine and beer. And that marginalization of alcohols literally determined the course of human history, especially the last 100 years, because certainly most of the conflict in the world around from really the Spanish American War forward to today, most of the conflict in the world are resource wars. And fundamental to those resource wars has always been oil supply. The world moving forward on one choice of energy for locomotion, to make things go, make them move. That has become the most dangerous choice on the planet. That humans, we perpetuate this choice every time we fill a gas tank, every time we throw something in a trash can. Because here's the cosmic joke. In the oil world, in the oil-fired, oil-powered world, there has to be a dump, because there will always be pollution. There will always be externalizations of emissions. And when you look at plastics, for example, plastics are oil derivatives. Well, we don't recycle plastics into oil, so they have to go into a dump. In an oil-fired economy, you will always have dumps. And the sad part here, in an oil-fired economy, you will always be feeding dumps and not feeding people, because it's the end of life of things that wind up in dumps that is becoming kind of our grindstone as a species. Alcohol world, totally different thing. There is no dump in an alcohol world. Whatever gets produced into alcohol fuels is used to either move things, heat things, cook things, heal things, make food, make commodities like beverages, like makeup and paints and plastics and polymers. People have no idea that alcohols, from a chemistry perspective, can do very much the same work that oil can do in all of its manifestations, not just fuels. Alcohols can warm us, they can feed us, they can entertain us, as it were. This is why I said most of what people know about alcohol is in a can of beer or what have you. There is so much more upside to alcohol fuels, that it exceeds the paradigm we live in by an order of magnitude, because we made this choice a long time ago to feed the petroleum economy. And the result is there's a landfill at the edge of town for everyone on Earth. So what are we going to do about that? Becomes
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
the upshot.
Yeah, what are we going to do about it? And the thing is, Jay, that there, you know, you mentioned that like we're perpetuating it. Hey, we're all just, we were, I was born in 1958, and you have an automobile, and there was never any thought about it. And so the idea of like, well, we're not just going to do away with our automobiles and our means of transportation, and we need fuel, and there's these big massive infrastructures that are in place to make all of this happen. So how do we begin to turn the corner on this 100-year cycle that we've had? And this is really what you're bumping up against, and the challenge and the thing that you're proposing. So, but the question remains, I mean, what can I don't want to feel guilty about putting gas into my car, because that's the only option I have, and I do want to go somewhere with it. So I guess the question is, like, how do we even begin to think about doing anything different?
Well, it's a wonderful question, and it leads into the social and political dimensions here. Certainly, I don't want to run a guilt trip on anyone about the choices we have all made, and that were made really before we were born on our behalf. This is what makes good old American gasoline a good old American gasoline. However, all things must pass, and this paradigm is a deadly paradigm. What is being baked in from an environmental and climate change perspective is beyond horrific, because it involves a word very few people really want to hear, called extinction. And that extinction won't just be limited to certain species in the natural order, like polar bears or elephants or tigers. This despeciation and the extermination of life on Earth is being driven by humanity's externalization of carbon waste, and that is solid, that is liquid, and that is gaseous. And what we've got is a situation where people are thinking about emissions. Governments are thinking about how to reduce emissions. Who is thinking about how to reduce carbon pollution of all kinds, not just emissions, carbon waste, plastics, poop in a toilet, sewage effluent that gets released into waters, trash in a landfill, or in my case, woody biomass built up on a forest floor for 100 years with nowhere to go but the sky. Shifting this paradigm involves challenging something between the ears that I cannot do for anyone else, it's pretty much an elective exercise where one wraps their head around the concept of there's no such place as a way. What was I thinking? Well, I wasn't thinking. And when I started to think about this notion of throwing things away, then it makes my brain hurt to realize there's no such place. Oh no. And when 8 billion people all do this, the biggest fantasy or lie or myth on planet Earth is that there's this place called away. There isn't. And so it is incumbent on any sane person to slow down, take a deep breath, and go, oh, how can I parse this information that is crowding my mind when I've got to go to work, or I've got to eat, I've got to get my kids to the dentist, or what have you? Because honestly, and this is the tragedy part, honestly, Steve, everything in this world is more important than the contents of one's trash cans. Literally, everything under the sun. The trash is like, that's below the line. We don't think about trash. That's somebody else's job to haul it away, send it to the dump, to incinerate it, to make it, keep the streets clean. As long as it goes away, I'm good. So the challenge socially and politically, first of all, socially, is getting people to play in this realm where we've never played. We don't really want to think about trash because, like, again, this is a priorities challenge, as it were, that we have to elevate our respect for the waste that we produce on a daily basis, as individuals, as families, as small businesses, medium businesses, local governments, state governments, and the federal government, because it's no accident that the United States government and the military is the largest user of oil in the world. So, how do we begin to wind up the oil paradigm of burning oil and externalizing trash so that we can move on as a country and as a species from this wholesale retail extraction and dumping of carbon energy and carbon waste, because all human activity happens between these two value poles. The waste pole has no value. The carbon energy pole has a lot of value, because if you don't have some energy, then your waste can't go away and you can't go to work. So, how do we keep going? How do we begin to make life into a full circle? We have a relationship with carbon that goes beyond extract, dump. And that is so important to get people to give it a possibility that, oh, you mean I need to think bigger? Exactly. And if that hurts, if that's a challenge, then I feel you. But this is what, if anything's going to save us from ourselves, it will be the ability to get over ourselves as carbon polluter consumer types. And it's not to demean anyone, put them down, or anything else. It's to suggest that the richness of life that is to come will be directly proportional to how much of our old learning that we let go of, because we cannot be polluters and move to a pollution-free world. We have to let pollution go and stop letting pollution rule our lives and the fate of this planet.
It's interesting because I'm thinking like listening to what you talk about. It's like we're nibbling at the edges when we do things like, okay, if we can get 32 miles to the gallon instead of 30 miles to the gallon, we're making a difference in our world. Or if we can take the aluminum can and put it into one bin, it somehow reduces the overall footprint of trash that we're making. When one little, like, it's kind of like, just like I said, nibbling at the edges, but it's not a major quantum shift in the way we think about all of this. So what you're saying is, if we have all of this trash, and I'll let's just throw this one screen back up there. If we have all this trash, which is in the bottom two pictures, or the bottom left-hand corner picture for sure, and we somehow can convert that into a fuel, then my goodness, now we're not, now we're getting, like, it's like two birds with one stone. We're getting rid of one problem, and we're supplying something for another challenge that we have, that we're currently using something that's adding to the external carbon buildup that's going on. Does that sound right?
That is absolutely, and it goes goes on from there. Our government spends about $730 billion a year on military endeavors to ensure the security of supply lines for foreign oil.
Mm.
What could we do with another $730 billion a year? Well, first of all, we could make a down payment on the national debt. Did that ever occur to anyone? No. What we've got is a government that picks winners to accommodate losers. And
Mhm.
honestly, the waging of war is a losing proposition. Nobody wins wars. We shouldn't be having wars. And the defense industry, I don't mean to sound not patriotic or anti-American, but the defense industry is a symptom of a deeper dysfunction of the brutalization of our planet is involved with the use of energy and the use of dirty energy. Why do we need to go to the Middle East to drag oil from the ground and ship it on freighters to the United States to get me to the grocery store? It makes zero sense. And the carbon pollution that this is unleashed, it was fine when there were 2.3 billion people on the planet back in 1960. It's not fine now that we're approaching 7.8 billion people all living and consuming. Everyone's heard the term global overshoot of we're consuming more resources than the earth provides on a yearly basis. There will be no future for humanity if we all consume 2.5 Earths. It just doesn't compute. So, this is a logic model that we either continue to kind of work around or it's somebody else's problem to suss out, or we go, wait a minute, I'm a smart person. I can slow down and think about this and think about what is the social dimension here? Is it bigger than the money involved in doing this? Or is it all because we need some rich guy like Jeff Bezos or Richard Branson or Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk to pay attention to carbon pollution and make this happen? Well, if we wait for another rich person to step in and do this for us, we're as stupid, we're as dumb as a box of rocks. And you probably have a chocolate metaphor for that, Steve, with all your years in the Gump saddle. The the joke is on us. The carbon joke is on us. And personally, I don't want to become the punchline of the cosmic carbon joke. And I don't want my community or my forest or my country or my planet to become the punchline of this cosmic carbon joke, because there is cause and effect. What we burn has consequences. What we throw away has consequences. How do we make this process more than this? Because this is a death sentence. This is life. This is how life has always worked on our planet. It's no joke that nature recycles everything. We all know this. Eventually, nature takes everything full circle. That's why we have the geologic record and we can dig up dinosaur bones, or we can look at the ruins of Pompeii that was buried by Mount Etna 2,000 years ago and find a perfectly preserved chariot encrusted with diamonds and rubies and gems that moved the noblemen down the road back in Roman era, the Roman era. We have learned almost nothing about the dangerous effects of carbon. So it's incumbent on us to become kind of scholars, students, would be scientists. It's okay to think about the chemistry of water soluble biodegradable alcohols versus float on water, kills birds, sticks to everything it touches, oil as a fuel type. So the social dimension is huge. It's not really a money problem so much as it is a cohesion problem. a diffusion of social responsibility problem is that, we're all kind of alone in the world as consumers. We make our own choices. You can buy an EV if you want, or you can afford one. You may want pizza. I may want a hamburger. We're all kind of in our own little silos of consumption and of elimination. And we don't talk about elimination. We talk about what we consume. And this is
Right.
all well and good as talking about our market choices, but we seldom, if ever, talk about what we don't. And this is the elephant in everybody's room that I am working on addressing, not just for myself, although I'm fond of saying, call me selfish. I don't want my house to burn down in the forest, which is why I started the company, which is in some ways true. But this is not about me saving my house and making a whole bunch of money. The point here is to do something right and good that makes the world, that leaves the world a better place than I found it when I came into the world and grew up in this world. And much to my horror, discovered that all is not well. And until enough people have that epiphany, I call it having your, pardon me, the vernacular, having your holy shit moment. And I should put a trademark on that. When was your holy shit moment when you really got the enormity of the carbon pollution problems our species is facing that are essentially self-inflicted? What are we going to do? So,
So one of the questions, Jay, is, is this a practical solution? Can we really take carbon waste,
absolutely.
trash, and can we convert it into it? And I know that, I'd like to share the one slide from your website that talks about the technology, and we don't have to go
Sure.
deep into the technology, but I would love for you to just basically give we've only got about 7 or 8 minutes left, so give a 2 or 3 minute version of how the technology actually works.
Very good. Well, as I've said, the gasification of solid and liquid waste, trash and garbage and sewer sludge and so forth is in that blue cylinder on the left called a rotary kiln gasifier that breaks everything down into synthetic gas, which is what we convert into mixed alcohols. But rather than pull people into the technology architecture, it might be easier to just suggest that this is already being done and will be done all over the planet by every entity that can stand up a project, because every industry is drowning in carbon waste and pollution. We don't know where to park it anymore. So I'll mention a Canadian company that is already doing this and producing methanol and ethanol. It is a company called Enerkem, Enerkem, enerkem.com. Enerkem has stood up a project in Edmonton, Alberta, which is doing exactly this. They are building a much larger project in Rotterdam. And so this paradigm is already out of the box and working at scale, at very large scale, and it will only become larger and larger as the projects come to market. They are built, they are operated, they validate themselves financially. There are no smokestacks in this architecture, so they validate themselves from a process perspective by first not emitting anything to make the fuel. And did we have to go 500 miles away to find a resource to produce the fuel from? No. We built the project right next to the city landfill. So it's right there and it's already being delivered to the landfill. So why not one step further directly to mixed alcohols? That is our business model. And the technology, as I said last week, is about as proven as going to the moon rockets or electric vehicles. Gasification and gas to liquid fuel catalysis are widely deployed around the world, mainly in the oil and gas and coal industries. We're simply applying these technologies to 21st century problems in the other part of the world outside of oil, gas, and coal, because that is where the world really, that's where we draw all of what life has to offer, is from beyond the energy that is required to make our lives go.
So who builds these things? Is it going to be the private sector? Is it going to be the public sector? Does it have to be a combination of both? Do you not care who builds them as long as somebody builds them? I mean, what's it going to take to actually get these? There's something happening in Edmonton. There's something happening over in Rotterdam. And eventually these are going to be throughout all of the cities and throughout all of the world. But what's it going to take to get this thing into kickstarted and get going?
Well, this is deep industrial engineering, and there are certainly lots of what we call EPC contractors, engineering, procurement, and construction contractors. Texas is full of EPC contractors, names you would know, like Halliburton, Black and Veatch. There are a number of others, and these are companies whose competency is to build industrial scale projects, and this would also include solar and wind build outs and so forth. These are not built by public entities. They are typically built by engineering companies because of the specifications. It's highly technical, very capital intense. Our first two projects in the Missoula corridor are about $200 million in capital raised. This is not going to be small. It's the opposite of small. And that is the safe harbor for the world, is that if we think big, we will find plenty to work with if we think big. But if we think small, oh, this will never happen because it's never been done. This is not true. It's already being done, and it will be done at larger and larger scale until the end of time or slime, whichever comes first. And I put that slime in there just to kind of put some salt on it, that, talk is cheap. Time is short. We cannot renew time. We can renew our familiarity with the scientific method and how the world works by drawing closer to it and not pushing it away as well. It's not my problem. This is Toups' problem, or this is Bioroot's problem. No, this is humanity's problem. We will solve this together, or we will all go down together. It's really that much of a call to action. So,
Jay, I think the time has come. And it's a good time in history. The last year has forced people to stop and reflect on what's important in their own
Absolutely.
life, and hopefully they've gained some awareness of the impact that they have on the community and their neighbors. And ultimately, this is going to take a lot of individuals who go, this is no longer acceptable, the way we've been doing things, especially when there's better ways to do things. And so that's going to be the social change, and then that will drive the political change. And, as you say, the money is there because if it economically makes sense to do, there's going to be more than enough money to do it. And the beauty of it is that we don't have to like it's not like you have to stop doing everything we're doing. It can just be a process that is kind of replaces what we're doing. Of course, the oil companies aren't going to go away without a hard fought, and maybe that's where some of the political oomph is going to be necessary to make it happen. But if there's enough social oomph behind it, then there's political oomph. So I think it's great. We met, 4 or 5 years ago, and, you've been working on this for a lot longer than that. I admire your efforts, and you're really trying to do something special. And it's, it's like, it's a bit like pushing a rock uphill. It takes a lot of effort, but at some point, we're going to get to the top of the hill, and there's just going to be momentum going. And so anyway, please come back and, keep us posted on this. I wanted to make sure that people had a chance to kind of understand the basics and the overall story, and the overall story is no more complicated than we have carbon, waste, trash, garbage, human excrement that needs to get that is just overwhelming the planet, and it could be converted. The technology exists to convert it into alcohol fuels, which are a cleaner and a stronger fuel than our oil currently is. And so and our engines would run on the same kind of thing without like any kind of serious like reinvention of the wheel that way. So it seems like
no
a time
changes.
It seems like a project whose
no changes whatsoever.
Yep, and I just think that I just think that hopefully people will go, okay, let's go, let's get on the bandwagon, let's make this happen. So if people are interested, they should probably reach out to you and continue the conversation. Obviously, you're trying to do something. Like an individual probably feels powerless against it, other than to start sharing this news with other people.
Absolutely. It's kind of a Vulcan mind meld. I learned a lot by watching Star Trek over the years. If we want to live long and prosper, we will start to think more like Spock and less like Gilligan on Gilligan's Island, because honestly, Gilligan isn't going to save us, but putting our minds together, whether it's online, offline, through web pages, through due diligence and understanding of the world we live in, and our beautiful, precious connection with each other. And again, Steve, I'm going to thank you so much for the extended interview, because this is wonderful to extemporize on this topic. Typically, most people want to hear the whole thing in 3 minutes, shut up. And this is like looking at the sun. I can't, people are going to squint if it's looking at the sun. So I appreciate it so much.
Well, you're very welcome. Please come back again. Keep us posted as this project progresses. And let's just, there's certainly an awareness. There's a concern for the climate, for our planet. So it's happening, but people don't know about this. So hopefully this helps to educate people. And whatever I can do to continue to help put out the word, let me know. So thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Steve. Wonderful. Have a great day, everyone.
All right. Well, whoops. That's. I'm going to let Jay finish the show here. Let me put. There we go. It's my show still. Jay hasn't taken over the show. Anyway, I want to thank Jay for coming and joining us today. And he was here last week, so we've got kind of the foundation of the story, and then this week we continued the story. And really, it comes down to the technology exists, but the political will and the social will haven't made it a reality yet. But Jay just keeps pushing, and he's going to make that happen. So, and people are concerned about it. They know that like our way of life isn't sustainable. And so it's all happening. It's all changing and evolving. All righty. Well, that's it. It's Friday after a few minutes after 11. So I got to get out of here. Next week, Angie LaRue, and we're going to talk crystals and advanced healing and quantum. She's coming back on Tuesday. And then Thursday, Christy Holt of Vibionics will be joining us. And I have another guest for sure on either Monday or Wednesday, but I haven't pinned down the exact date. And then we'll fill up the rest of the week, planning to do 5 shows. Everybody have a great weekend. I will see you all on Monday.